In this video, I'm going to be talking about every project Michelle Zauner was in / created that led up to the making of Japanese Breakfast, and I will be diving a bit into the band's discography and the journey they took to get to where they are today. I will leave a Spotify playlist in the description with some of my favorite Japanese Breakfast songs in case you want to check them out, or if you're already a fan, re-listen to the greats. I hope you enjoy. Back in 2005, Michelle Zauner started performing music under the pseudonym Little Girl Big Spoon. She posted her music on MySpace that garnered her some attention and eventually played some live shows in her hometown of Eugene, Oregon. Around 2006, she released an album called Boats to Boxes that later got leaked on YouTube in 2019. The first band Michelle joined after her solo career would be Post Post. The band was formed in 2008 at Bryn Mawr College, where Zauner studied and later graduated creative writing. They released 2 EPs together, planning to release a debut album, but broke up before they could finish it. After Post Post broke up, Michelle joined Birthday Girls. They released one album named Bear Country. The album was created when members of the band, Michelle, Nathan, and Berg, decided to, and I quote, write, record, and mix a full-length album in the woods of Oakland, Oregon in a trailer that Nathan's dad owns, and that after a day and a half with an 8-track and a handful of odd instruments, we came up with an album called Bear Country, end quote. While Michelle was still in Post Post, the band did a show with another band called Golden Ages. David Craig was the bassist of Golden Ages, while Michelle and Kevin O'Halloran were in Post Post. They met that night, and that's where it seemingly ended. One day, Devin got a text from Michelle inviting him to join a project her and Kevin were working on. Ian Dykstra, who was acquainted with Devin, later joined the band and Little Big League was born. In the fall of 2011, the Deli magazine ran a contest where the winner would get 2 free days of studio time with producer Kyle Slick Johnson. Michelle won the contest, and it gave Little Big League the opportunity to record their first project, a self-titled EP released in 2012. The EP consisted of 2 songs, the single Tokyo Drift and St. John's. In winter of 2012, the band started recording their debut album. When the record was finished, they started passing it around to friends, hoping it would reach a record label. After some shopping around, the record reached Jeff Mayers, who sent it off to Tiny Engines Records. They signed to Tiny Engines and eventually released their debut album, These Are Good People, in August of 2013. For the release of their second and final album, the band signed to Run for Cover Records. Tropical Jinx was the name of the album, and it came out in October of 2014. After that, Michelle returned to do a couple of shows with the band in 2016, but after those shows, the band officially separated. I went through their social media and have not seen any official statement from the band in regards to them breaking up. I guess they just quietly went their separate ways after the last show. Back in 2012, Michelle had a dumpling party with some of her friends. One of those friends was Rachel Gagliardi from the band Slut Ever. The two had a conversation about how stuck they felt creatively and decided to start a Tumblr blog where they post 1 song a day every day in June. Michelle, writing on her Tumblr blog, quote, I invited Rachel Gagliardi from Slut Ever and we talked a lot about feeling stuck creatively. I suggested that we start a blog. The conceit was that we wrote, recorded, and posted 1 song every day for the month of June. 2 days later, there was Rachel and Michelle do June.tumblr.com. The most important part of the blog was learning how to practice forgiveness. This is a Bella Lende quote I read on some blog. Show up, show up, show up, and after a while, the muse shows up too. That seemed relevant too. Instead of sitting down and creating a list of rules, I've written too many songs in the key of D, no more fingerpicking, no verse chorus structure, etc. that completely inhibited me from writing. I just had the pressure of needing to have a finished product by the end of the day to motivate me. Despite my busy work schedule, social obligations, even if I only had 10 minutes of free time during the day, they would be spent making sure I got my post for the day. While there are definitely songs I find completely unlistenable and all around awful, I was very happy with a lot of the material I produced. I plan on developing quite a few with Little Big League for our second LP. I highly recommend the project to anybody who's feeling creatively uninspired. Habituation is the key. The album is made up of 28 originals and 2 covers. Day 15 is Paws, Sore Tummy. Day 23 is Liz Spear's Chopsticks. The songs were later all compiled into one album called June, making it the first Japanese breakfast release. It came out while Michelle was still in Little Big League. A lot of the songs from June were later reworked and put on other albums. Songs Day 1, Day 5, Day 6, and Day 10 were reworked for the album Tropical Jinx as Miss AC, Take It to a Weird Sad Place, Boyish, and Deerhead respectively. Boyish would be reworked again for the album Soft Sounds from Another Planet. The song Day 22 would be reworked into Rugged Country for the album Psychopomp, and Day 30 would be reworked into the title track from the album Soft Sounds from Another Planet. Between May 5th and May 12th, during a Tumblr competition, Japanese Breakfast's second album was born. All the songs were posted onto the Tumblr may5to12songs.tumblr.com. Later, the songs were released onto Michelle's Bandcamp under the name Where Is My Great Big Feeling. Again, 2 songs off the album were reworked later for other releases. Heft for Psychopomp and My Mommy Is Sick, that was later renamed The Body Is a Blade, from Soft Sounds from Another Planet. The album only had a physical release as cassettes along Japanese Breakfast's third album, American Sound. American Sound was originally conceptualized under the title Prime Life Real Estate. The album is comprised mostly of songs posted on Michelle's Tumblr from 2011 to 2014. The first idea for this album seemingly came on April 20th, 2012, when she wrote on her Tumblr blog, quote, "Been contemplating an album of shitty recorded songs like this under the moniker Japanese Breakfast, entitled Prime Life Real Estate, obviously a work in progress." The album was released in July 2014, solely on Michelle's Bandcamp. Again, some of the songs were taken and re-recorded for other projects. The Woman That Loves You, Jane Come, and 777 were put on Psychopomp, while Roadhead and Jimmy Fallon Big were put on Soft Sounds from Another Planet. During the album cycle for Tropical Jinx in 2014, Michelle's mother got really sick. She decided to leave the band behind and go back home to take care of her. While at home, she wrote new songs about love and loss that would eventually end up on the record Psychopomp. The album got its name after mythological creatures named psychopomps, whose responsibility is to escort newly deceased souls from Earth to the afterlife. Their role is not to judge the deceased, but simply to guide them. The album rollout on Yellow Key Records began in January of 2016 with the single In Heaven. A second single, Everybody Wants to Love You, came out in February, originally written around 2009 for the project Bear Country. The label gave Michelle $500 to create her first music video. She created a concept for the album's opener, In Heaven, and gave it to Adam Kolodny to direct it. She also co-directed the video for Everybody Wants to Love You. The album was released on April 1st of 2016. After the album came out, Japanese Breakfast signed to Dead Oceans and announced the album was going to have an international release. To promote the album, they went out on tour supporting Mitski. Work on their second album started almost immediately after Psychopomp was released. Now with a major label came a lot more expectations. The album was originally envisioned to be, and I quote, "a full-length space opera about a woman who travels to Mars to escape star-crossed love with a robot," end quote, called Here Comes the Tubular Blues. But that version of the album was quickly scrapped. Michelle saying in an interview, quote, "When it was time to write Soft Sounds, I had a label, I had a deadline, and I had a lot more expectation. At first, I wanted to distance myself from my personal experiences, so I went into it thinking I was going to write a science fiction musical. The song Machinist was the first song I wrote for it, and it's quite different than the rest of the record. I quickly realized it didn't feel fulfilling for me at the time to continue with that narrative. I still felt like I had a lot to say about what I went through, and it felt phony just to pretend that I'm not gonna write about my mom dying under tragic circumstances. It was really a huge part of my life. I'm probably going to write about those experiences forever," end quote. The first single, Machinist, was released on May 4th, 2017, followed by Boyish and Roadhead on June 7th and July 6th, respectively. The lyrical themes of this album were Michelle's detachment and trauma. Michelle went on to be the sole director for Machinist, Roadhead, The Body Is a Blade, and Boyish. Adam Kolodny stayed on as director of photography. Machinist was actually the first video Michelle ever directed. I was also surprised to learn that Michelle directed the video for Better Oblivion Community Center's song, Dylan Thomas. For the promo of Soft Sounds from Another Planet, a game was released called Japanese Breck Quest. The main character is Jay Brecky, and the main objective of the game is to gather a band to help her fight an alien invasion. The game was developed by Michelle and game designer Elaine Pfaff. Peter Bradley made the soundtrack for the game, consisting of 8-bit rendered songs from the actual album Soft Sounds from Another Planet. To support the album, the band toured from 2017 to 2019. In 2017, Polyvinyl Record Co. sent out a Tascam for a track recorder to 12 artists, Japanese Breakfast being one of them, and got them to record 2 original songs. They were originally released on a 7-inch record in a set of all other 24 songs in December of 2017. The song Posing in Bondage, now on Jubilee, was originally on this compilation. In 2018, an indie game developer Shedworks commissioned Michelle to make a soundtrack for the new game Sable. While composing the music, Michelle found inspiration in the game Secret of Mana and its soundtrack, noting how the music made her feel and wanting to provide the same feeling to Sable players. Funnily enough, the game's technical director actually reached out to her through Twitter DM because of the Japanese Breakfast game we mentioned earlier. He was also interested because he and the team wanted somebody who wasn't already an established game composer but still a big fan of video games. Zonner only had some images of the game to go off of for creating her soundtrack. At first, she composed in the back of her Turman, but then later in 2018 and 2019, the recorded clips got longer. It was only in 2020, when playable builds of the game were sent to her, that the serious work started. Most of the recording was done in her home studio in lockdown. The game and the soundtrack were released in September of 2021. In 2019, Japanese Breakfast released 2 singles under the W Hotel Music label, one original song, Essentially, and a cover of Tears for Fears song, Head Over Heels. Proceeds from the cover single were later donated to the American Civil Liberties Union. Around September of 2020, Zonner announced a new project with Crying's Ryan Galloway. The two lived very close to each other, so it made it easy for them to exchange ideas back and forth during quarantine. They released Pop Songs 2020 on September 4th, 2020. Tell them when I'm coming. Tell them count the days. To contrast the previous themes of Psychopomp and Soft Sounds, Michelle set out to make an album about joy, saying, quote, I wanted to explore the other end of the spectrum of human experience and write about something really unexpected and surprising for not only my artistic narrative, but like the sad indie girl narrative in general. I felt like the most unexpected thing I could write about was joy. End quote. The first song written for the album was Be Sweet. Michelle teamed up with Wild Nothing's Jack Tatum years before Jubilee was planned to release. In an interview with Apple Music, Michelle said, quote, back in 2018, I decided to try out writing sessions for the first time, and I was having a tough go of it. My publisher has set me up with Jack Tatum of Wild Nothing. What happens is they lie to you and say, Jack loves your music and wants you to help him write his new record. And to him they say, Michelle loves Wild Nothing, she wants to write together. Once we got together, we were like, I don't need help, I'm not writing a record. So we decided we just write a pop song to sell and make some money. We didn't have anyone specific in mind, we just knew it wasn't going to be for either of us. Of course, once we started putting it together, I realized I really loved it. I think the distance of writing it for someone else allowed me to take on this sassy 80s woman of the night persona. To me, it almost feels like a Madonna, Whitney Houston, or Janet Jackson song. End quote. The record later released as a lead single of Jubilee on March 2nd, 2021. The song was supposed to be released around October 2020, but the release of both the single and the album were delayed because of the pandemic. Michelle said she couldn't stand to water down this big, lush album by doing acoustic sessions of it on Zoom. The whole album is about a complicated type of joy, recognizing that joy can still be painful. The main example is the opener Paprika, which talks about the joys of creating and the loneliness of being an artist. The 3 pre-album singles, Be Sweet, Posing in Bondage, and Savage Good Boy received videos directed by Michelle. After the album release, the songs Paprika and Slide Tackle were released as singles. A version of Be Sweet was recorded in Simlish, and in 2022 it got a Korean version featuring So Yoon. Jubilee was nominated for Best Alternative Album at the 2021 Grammys, and Japanese Breakfast was nominated in the category of Best New Artist, but sadly lost both. They also performed at Coachella and on SNL. They released a Live at Electric Lady EP that featured stripped-down versions of new songs like Be Sweet, Savage Good Boy, and Tactics, Little Big League songs like Lindsay, and the cover of Weezer's Say It Ain't So, as well as Bumper's ballad Zero. Though it wasn't included in the EP, the song Behind the Mask from Sable was originally recorded for the session. The band posted it on their YouTube channel as promo for the EP. In 2022, Japanese Breakfast toured with the likes of Florence and the Machine, The National, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. They released a cover of Yoko Ono's Nobody Sees Me Like You Do as a part of a tribute album called Ocean Child: Songs of Yoko Ono. They released their second Spotify singles EP, and Michelle borrowed backup vocals on the 1975 track Part of the Band. Japanese Breakfast released a song for a kids show called The Helpsters, and Michelle even made an appearance on the show to sing the song. In January of 2023, Michelle stated in a tweet that she might rework Day 3 off of June for Japanese Breakfast's fourth album. After Jubilee, Michelle joked around a lot about LP number 4, saying that the name of the project is going to be My Fish, My Ass, My Attitude. However, earlier this year, a playlist dropped on Japanese Breakfast Spotify titled Star Star 4, so make of that as you will. They're still currently touring the world in support of Jubilee, and I believe Michelle is doing a book tour in support of the paperback edition of her memoir, Crying in H Mart. The dates for the American and European Japanese Breakfast tour stretch all the way to October of this year, so go to their site in case you might want to attend the show. I didn't mention anything regarding Michelle's memoir, even though I absolutely adored it and think it's really important. I would definitely recommend it to anybody watching, listening. It's a really, really good book, and it's one of my favorites. But I didn't mention it because I didn't want to go into a whole deep dive and diverge much from the music side of Michelle and Japanese Breakfast. But after all of this research, I'm thinking of making a video just on Michelle as a writer, director, and honestly, in my humble opinion, a fashion icon. Again, there's a playlist down in the description of Japanese Breakfast songs and Little Big League songs, and a lot of other stuff are down in the description if you want to check it out. Thank you again to anybody listening or watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and have a good day. Bye. My fish, my ass, my attitude.